Okay, so Israel decides to let his youngest son Benjamin go down to Egypt because Judah um, basically made a decree telling him, I will watch after him. If anything happened to him, it'll be my fault. I'm the one to blame. I don't. He didn't want his father to be sorrowful, and also too, they want to get their brother Simeon back because Simeon was still down there. So the father gave them some more money. He told them to take uh, the Pharaoh officer, which is use of his own son at the time, take him some gifts like food and give them extra money, besides the money that they came back with, give that back to him plus more. And, basically so he could show mercy upon him. So they let the little brother go down to Egypt. Yusuf sees his little brother and he asks them, "Is this the brother you guys were talking about?" The other brothers say, "Yeah." The nine say, "Yeah." So as he looked at him, he goes in another room. He weeps because he's seeing his brother for the first time in 13 years. So he's crying, and so he washes his face, cleans his face. Afterwards, he comes back out to them, and he actually invites them to his house where they have a feast with him. As they're feasting with him, he asks about the dad, like, so how's your father? Is he still alive? How's his health? They saying he's in good health. He just wants us to make sure we bring the little brother back. So so once they prove, they have a little brother, they like I said, he let Simeon go. Simeon is eating in the house with them. He sends all the brothers off on their way, but he gives them garments. But he gives Benjamin more. He gave Benjamin 300 shekels of silver and 5 garments. He gave the brothers garments, and he made sure they had something before they left. Once they got a certain distance, Yusuf had one of the Egyptian servants stop them. He was like, "Go ahead of them and stop them. Search through their bags," because what he had the Egyptian servant, do before they left was to put his silver royal cup into his little brother Benjamin's sack. So the Egyptian's servant, him and like some more men went and caught up with the brothers, with the Israelite brothers, stopped them, searched through their bags, and they asked them, "So you reward good for evil?" The brothers are like, "What are you talking about now? Like, what's happening now?" They search all their bags from the oldest to the youngest, and once they get to the youngest, they see the silver cup in it, and they like, "Oh my gosh!" They all rent their clothes. They going crazy because they like, "Oh my gosh, now our father gonna die." So they explain to them, like, we didn't steal this. We don't know where this came from. Yusuf, they go back to Yusuf's house, to the officer in command's house, which is their brother, and they explain to him like, we did not do this. Like, we didn't steal anything. We don't know what's going on right now. So they're like, okay, well, he tells them like, well, he has to stay. He has to serve me. If I find anything in his bag, in any of these bags, whoever has what I'm looking for, which is the silver cup, they have to serve him. He's like, so now your little brother has to stay here and serve me. So Judah plead with him again, like, please don't do this. My father, he's at an old age. He will die literally if this boy don't come back. This is his only youngest son at his old age. He got to come back with us. Like, please let him come. So they explaining, that, like, they pleading with him, like, please don't do this. Like, if you don't bring him back, you're gonna kill our father. So by him hearing this and then seeing his little brother and all his brothers again, like, he couldn't control his crying this time. He just cried out real bad with a loud cry, and he made all of the Egyptian servants leave, whereas it was just only his brothers. So when he told them, like, once all the Egyptians left, he told his brothers, like, it's me, it's Yusuf, it's your brother. And so the brothers were still in disbelief. He told them to come closer. He spoke to them in their language this time, in Hebrew, because when the brothers first came to Egypt, um, Yusuf had a translator. He could speak Egyptian, and he could speak Hebrew, but he spoke Egyptian to the brothers, and he had a translator to translate so the brothers can know what he was saying. and I'm assuming that translator could speak Hebrew and Egyptian. So he's telling the brothers in the native tongue, "I'm your brother." So they looked at him, and they wept, they cried. Yusuf, he couldn't control his crying. He fell upon his brother's neck and cried. His brother fell upon his neck, and they both cried on each other. He kissed him, kissed his brothers. His brothers kissed him, and they talked to him. And I'm pretty sure that conversation. This is a side note. I'm pretty sure that conversation was like, how's it been here? What have you been doing? Why didn't you come back home? Stuff like that. But getting back to the real thing, I don't want to digress. So they talked with their brother. Afterwards, they said, we got to tell our father. And Yusuf was like, no, bring him here. He can, he can live here, where he won't have to live in famine where he is. Bring him up here. So the brothers go back to the dad. They go back to Israel and tell him, your son Yusuf is alive. He is alive. He's not dead. The father, he was in disbelief. He didn't believe it at first. His heart was faint. He was like, I don't believe it. So they told him again, no, he is alive. He runs Egypt. He governs Egypt. So the father, his heart was lifted up. He couldn't believe it. They hurried up and settled his father and brought him to Egypt. But before the father went there, Yusuf sent them back to their father with all these donkeys and everything. He sent them with so much stuff, and so the father ended up coming. And once he seen the father, he just fell on his neck. Him and his father cried really badly because they both missed each other. He haven't seen his father in over a decade. So they both crying. Definitely his father crying because he thought he lost his son. He thought, his, like, just the thought of somebody's child dying before them. That's hard. That's heartbreaking. So I get it. So they both crying. But Joseph, he crying the worst because he haven't seen him. And also too, while Yusuf was down there, Joseph was down there, he ended up having sons, and his sons end up having sons. He ended up the Pharaoh ended up um, having him marry an Egyptian woman, and then he ended up having kids with her. When he had the kids with her, Pharaoh was very he was definitely for Yusuf. Like his heart was all for Yusuf. Like by him helping his kingdom, he definitely looked out for him. So like whatever he needed, he gave it to him. So righteously so, the Most High was definitely in the favor of that Egyptian reign before, until it got worse. Not before it got worse, but after it got worse. He stayed with them. Well, before it got worse, I was right the first time. Before it got worse, the Most High saw favor in Egypt because Egypt ended up taking care of the Israelites, and the Israelites ended up staying in Goshen, which was one of the richest land in Egypt. So Pharaoh told him that his whole family can stay in wherever they wanted, but they chose Goshen because it was the most nourished land. It was pure. It was clean. So Yusuf said, he's about to die. He was so happy to see his son before he died. So he stayed down there for 17 more years. At this time, Yusuf is 47 years old. Israel, he should be like 147. So, yeah, he was 147 years old when he died. So to make a long story short, he tells a revelation. Israel tells a revelation to all 12 of his sons about what their future will hold for them before he dies and how they will be before he dies. He also blessed Ephraim and Manasseh, Yusuf's sons, but he gave the blessing mainly to Ephraim, the youngest, because he said the youngest will be great and he will be a great nation, and all of his sons will be a great nation. And actually, before the sons all split up, meaning the sons split up and Yusuf got sold into bondage and the brothers, when all of them were together and the father had the land to himself, the Most High came to Israel and told him he will be the father of a great nation. He will bring all the people back to the promised land that he promised his fathers, Abraham and Isaac. So Israel, he ended up, blessing his whole family. Once he kissed all of them, he put his feet in the bed and he gave up the ghost and died. his son, he before he died, he made his son promise him that he will bury him in the place where his father Abraham and Isaac and them are. So he did that. Yusuf ended up asking Pharaoh if he could bury his father in the place that, in the land of Canaan where he's from. So Pharaoh blessed them and told them they can go, told them they can take some Egyptians with them. So they went down there, they buried his father, and it was a beautiful thing. So I'm finna end this video before it cuts off. I hope you guys have a good day. Hope you was edified. The water